Hi, this is Jeff Cohn from SI Restoration, emergency water damage, fire damage, mold remediation, asbestos abatement, and of course, the repairs to bring you back to whole. Today I'm going to talk about a real popular question that I get, and that is, gee, we have a water damage. You guys were out last night, but how do we know, A, that it's going to be dry, and B, how do we know that we're not going to get mold? Good questions. Okay, so let's start off. First of all, in the old days, and unfortunately it would happen still today with a lot of restoration companies, is that they use a standard moisture meter. Now, what do I mean by standard? A standard whether it's industry related or something you find at a Home Depot or a Lowe's, usually has it's a meter that tests the moisture, and then what happens is it touches the percentages, and it has a quarter size. The length of it is a quarter of an inch of the prongs that go in to actually find where the moisture is. So, two problems. Number one, when you go to stick it on the wall, you'll realize that you have a quarter inch prong, but it's actually going into a half inch drywall. So you still have another quarter of inches of just wet drywall or drywall, sorry, that you can't tell. Now that commercial is 5/16, so it's the same problem that you have. So basically, what happens now, there are companies that have longer prongs and they do that, but most people don't. So the problem in that scenario is that you could have moisture inside the walls, obviously, because the water can go underneath the drywall very easily. And then, of course, in a commercial situation, you have what's called a C channel. That means the metal studs that all go down, okay, and then you have this metal stud that goes on the floor. Most people see it, and it looks like a long cup, okay? It just goes like this. And of course, especially if the water is too high up on the floor, or if it's coming from the second floor down to the first floor, third to fourth, fourth to third, etc., it fills up the cup. And then what happens, it just becomes a sitting reservoir. So, the restoration company comes in and goes, oh, look, I stuck it in the wall and it's dry. Okay. Well, unfortunately, it's not. And of course, you're going to get mold. Excuse me. So, the solution to that is instead of cutting out the drywall, which a lot of people think, and that is to use what's called a GPP, or grains per pound of moisture system. So it comes in either two ways. You can either do it the old-fashioned way, which is getting the temperature of the room and the relativity of the room, and then going on to what's called a psychrometric chart and following it, which most people get wrong anyway. If you see a psychrometric chart, I wouldn't even worry about it. There's also mechanisms that most restoration companies should have, and that is a GPP piece of equipment that actually goes in and determines will actually grab the relative humidity, grab the temperature, and then formulate it and tell you what the grains per pound of moisture is. So then you say to yourself, okay, what big deal, Jeff? What does that mean? Okay, so the best thing to do is we want the idea of doing restoration in an emergency water damage situation is we want to bring you back to what's called a pre-loss condition, which means we're not making you better. We're making you exactly how you were prior to this water damage. So what happens is that we want to go into another area. So let's take a hotel, for example. We want to go to a different floor or a different section of the floor that we're on and go in and do the GPP, grains per pound of moisture reading. So if the reading there is 50 in the dry area, but in the area that we're working on that got damaged is 100, okay, now we know that our goal is to dry the area out to get it to the point where it is now a 50. So the important thing of this is not, first of all, it's not like we're guessing. Like in the old days, it was guess. Now, in these days, we actually know and we have a goal to get to. So people say, well, how long does it take for the equipment to sit there? Well, until we get to that 50 mark. So it could take a day, could take 2 days, could take 3 days, could take 4 days. Now, I have had people who say to me, gee, I've had equipment sitting here for 2 weeks, a month, by some restoration companies. Well, the magic rule is this. If it takes 36 to 72 hours for mold to grow, and you haven't dried it by 72 hours or maybe a little bit longer, it may be time to take the equipment out and start cutting out all the wet areas. So you really shouldn't go more than, maybe 80 hours after the actual damage has occurred. So there are plenty of other moisture situations and moisture answers, but that's your basic knowledge of moisture detection, finding out when it's completely dry. And remember, when you remove moisture, you remove the mold situation, the mold issue. Okay, so the day that people say, well, what about a guarantee, and how do we know mold's not going to come back? The answer is, as long as there's no moisture, extensive moisture, you most than likely, are not going to get mold issues or mold growth. But as I tell customers, the day we leave, okay, you can have another leak. You can have the same leak coming in. You can have a different leak coming in. As long high humidity, all those can bring back mold again. So I just want to let you guys know that. Again, thank you very much. Jeff Cohn from SI Restoration, emergency water damage, fire damage, mold remediation, asbestos abatement, and of course the repairs to bring you back to whole. Thank you.